Welcome to your very first Microsoft Office Specialist Excel Associate Certification Practice Exercise, or if you're in Management 1400, Introduction to Data Analytics, this is your first Excel assignment. We will follow along what is required for the Excel Associate Certification, and this first part is working on creating and managing worksheets and workbooks. To complete this assignment or to follow along, you'll have needed to have downloaded two files. One is your text file called card types, and obviously the Excel file for this, which is S1, meaning spreadsheet 1 card types Excel file to follow along. So the very first thing that we're going to learn how to do is we're going to learn how to insert data. And prior to taking and doing this first exercise, please make sure that you have reviewed one of two videos if you're in the Management 1400 class, or if you're just taking this online. Make sure you will have reviewed the videos that's talking about tabs and ribbons and how they work, because your tabs at the top, file, home, insert, ribbons below, make sure you know how to navigate that. So as we talk about different things, we can all move together fairly rapidly if we need to. So if you're not there already, if you're in one of these other tabs down here at the bottom, make sure that we are in the Cards tab. So click on the Cards tab if we're not there. The very first thing that we're going to be doing is we are going to be inserting data. So go ahead and put your cursor inside cell A2. Click on that so that this cell is highlighted. And now we will go and use the Data tab here at the top. Click on the Data tab. And we are going to choose to insert from text CSV file. Go ahead and click from text CSV file. And that will open up here. And it's asking me where my files are. So in this case, I have to go down. I'll do the downloads. This is card types. We're going to choose this card types file here. And then click import. And now we have a little box that will pop up, and it's showing us here that we have these headers up here, and that's how we want it. And we have 6 rows of data, and this has come through. And if on your exam it may ask you to do something like, if your header doesn't come up here as this way, you may have to go in and click transform data and choose right here, use first row as headers. But since we already have that, here we have our item, our type, description, inventory, and etc. That's already in our headers. We don't need to click this button. So what we want to do now is there's two options. We can just click close and load to the left, or on the previous page, if we just click load, it would load that into a new worksheet. But for your exam and for this assignment, we want to load this into an existing worksheet there at A2. So click the drop down, this little drop down here, and click close and load to. That will pop up, and it says here we want to import our data. We're importing it as a table. We'll leave that alone. And where do you want to put the data? We want to put it in an existing worksheet, and it's showing that it will be, the data will come into starting in cell A2, which is where we want it, and we go ahead and click OK. And it will take a second, and now it has loaded our data. When we're done with this, we can actually now close out queries and connections. And we have completed the very first task. Okay. The second thing that we're going to do on here is we are going to name a range, and we're going to do a lot more of this later, and naming ranges is extremely important. So I won't go into everything that we need to know about naming ranges right now. We're just going to complete this as an exercise. So while we're in our Cars tab, if you've gone out of it, make sure you come back into our Cars tab. We're going to name a range right now in our Cars tab. So what we're going to do is on row number 8 right here, we'll go from A1 and we'll highlight all the way to F8. So we'll go from A8 to F8, and we're going to name this range, and we're going to practice this twice. There's two ways to do this. We can go right here into our name box where it says A8, and we can just type in a name, and we're going to call this BMW, and hit enter, and we have named that range. And I'm going to show you it. We're going to do that one more time. We're going to go into Sales by Car tab now, and we're going to do this again. We're going to come in here and name another row, and in there we're going to name this row here row 7. We're going to name it from A7 all the way to F7, and we're going to highlight that row right there, and we're going to name this June. And one way was to name it here in the name box. The other way to name this is we can go into our formulas tab, and we have a function here called define name, and it already brings in what our reference is, and we actually want to call this June. So we'll just add an E right there and click OK, and we just named that range. So that's one way to do it. We'll also do it one more time for practice. We're going to do this one here. We'll do A8 to F8, and we'll name it here, and we're going to call this total row. And the reason why I'm showing you this a third time is in Excel, when you're naming a range, you cannot leave a space. It cannot be total space row. You have to put in an underscore. So on your exam, you will have one of your assignments will be to name some ranges. And in this case, they'll ask you to name it something like total row, and you need to know to put in your underscore. If you don't put that in, you'll actually get that wrong. So go ahead and hit enter, and we've named our ranges. And we can actually come up here in the name box and do the drop down and see that we have several name ranges. We have BMW, June, total row, and then there's some tables named and other things that were already in the sheet that we gave you. Okay, so what if you want to delete some data? So in this case, we're going to practice deleting some data, and we want to delete the June row here. So we can just go ahead and click on June, and it highlights that row. And when we delete data, we don't want to clear the data. We actually want to delete the data. So go ahead and click delete on your keyboard. And if you do that, notice that it just deletes that data and leaves it in there, but doesn't delete the row. So one of your best and brightest friends in Excel is the Control-Z command. So we're going to do Control-Z and bring that data back up. And now right click and hit delete, and then click table rows, and it completely deletes that and then brings up the total row from row 8 to row 7. And now you see that we have 5 rows of data here instead of the 6 rows that we had. So there's a difference on how we delete, and on your assignment you'll need to delete the data so that row comes up. The other is you can format complete worksheets, and we're going to format now margins here, and we can modify the page setup itself so that we have specific margins. And we're going to stay in the Sales by Car tab, and what we're going to do now is set the left margin to 0. So while we're here, we can click the page layout, and you've already should have seen the other videos where we talked about these are the tabs, this is the ribbon, these are the groupings, and inside the groupings we have this little pop out here if we need to go it. But in this case, we're doing margins. We're adjusting our margins. We're going to click the drop down, and we're going to choose custom margins. Okay, and when we're in here, we can choose print preview to see what it's going to look like. So we can bring that up, and it shows our print preview. And for whatever reason, we're going to decide we want this table to actually be justified all the way to the left on here. So we can adjust our margins here, or we can go back or escape, but we can hit the escape button or the back button escape on your keyboard or click the back button there. We'll go back to here, choose page layout, margins again, custom margins, and we're going to set left to 0. And then we can click the print preview there and see that it was justified all the way over to the left. Okay, now let's go ahead and hit escape. And we have now done assignment number 3. Number 1 was bringing in the data. Number 2 was naming some ranges and deleting data. Number 3 was working on our margins. And now we'll look at number 4, formatting a worksheet, adjusting the row height and column width. So let's go to the Invoice tab right now. And in the Invoice tab, you can see in column F that we have all of these number signs. And then down here in column 14 and F14, we have this 95. The reason why you see all these number signs right here is that there is data in that cell that is greater than the width of the cell. And so we might have to go in and adjust the size of the cell. And this happens a lot in Excel, or it happens often where we'll put data in Excel and the data width will be greater than the cell width, and we'll get a bunch of number signs. So don't freak out when you see the number signs. All it means is, again, the cell width is not as wide as the data. And there's a couple of ways that we could do this, and we're going to do a couple of these. So right now, one is we can put our cursor up here on the F, and if we click, it highlights that row. We'll click off, but put our cursor on the F, and notice as I'm moving my cursor from the F column to the G column, that it goes from a down arrow to a double arrow. So right now, when I've got this double arrow, I can double click, and it will resize the cell, or the column in this case, to the width, cell width of the greatest amount of data. So right now, amount due, which is on our header, has the widest width, so that cell was readjusted to that width. We can also drag it. We can do a couple things like that. We can drag it like this, but if we want it to just set it like there, and we go, okay, we don't want it that big, we can drag it a little bit back, or those type of things, we can do that. You can also, besides dragging left or right, or double clicking, which is an auto fit, for that is we can choose an exact size. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and double click this and put it to an auto width, and we can do an exact size. So for example, I'm going to come over here to column O just to play around with. Now I'm going to click on column O right here and click on the Home tab. So we're in the page layout, click on the Home tab. And over here in the Home tab under Cells Grouping, we have Format. We're going to click this drop down, Format, and it has column width. We can do Auto, Default, and all that, or we can set it. So we're going to click on column width, and notice right now it says 8.26, but we're going to change this to 15. So you'll see here on column O that it's now set at a 15 width. So there's sometimes reasons where you may want to set the width. And besides setting the width of a column or row, you can also set the height of a row. So the width of a column, you can also set the height of a row. So we're going to highlight row 1. Here again, we can adjust this up or down. So we can again adjust this up or down. Now this might be too much, over here. So we want to be able to adjust the height of that. So we're going to go ahead and click on there. We'll highlight that cell. We're in the home screen. We're going to go here to Format, and this time we're going to choose row height, and we're going to set this row height to 30. And click OK, and now we've set number 1 row height. You have now completed step number 4, and we're going to go on to step number 5. Step number 5 is we're going to customize the header and footer, and we need to understand that we'll sometimes get this mixed up, because right here these are called headers above our columns right here. On row 3, this is the invoice header, the client header, so we'll need that to understand that later on, but now we're talking about the header and footer when we go to print. So while We're on the invoice tab here. Let's go to page layout. And under page layout, under the page setup grouping, we have this little pop-up arrow right here under page setup. We can do that pop-up arrow and we can go to header and footer. And we're going to practice this 3 times in the next 3 assignments. So in this case, we want to do custom header. We'll choose custom header. And when it brings up custom header, here we have a left section, a center section, and a right section. And we're going to just do this in the center section. So just click your cursor into the center section, and we're going to call this car sales. And just click OK. Now we can verify on how well we did. We have car sales down here. We can hit the print preview button, and it comes up with our car sales header at the top, and we have our data there to be printed. Okay, and now we can hit escape or the back arrow to take us back to our page. We're also going to do this as a footer. So we did it as a header. Now we're going to do it a footer. So go back into page layout, the pop-up on page setup, header and footer again, and we're going to choose custom footer. And we have these keys over here at the top. We can format our text. We can insert a page number, insert number of pages. We can insert a date. We can insert a time. We can insert a file path, different file names, a sheet, and pictures, and all of that. But in this case, we're now going to come to the right section as a header, as a footer, and we are going to choose the date. So we're going to click Insert Date. And we have this @ symbol and then the date in hard parentheses. And click OK. And we can see now here on our footer, we have the date July 12th of 2023, and we can click Print Preview. And so when we were to print this, our Excel file, we would have car sales at the top as our header, and we would have our date as a footer. And we can always go back in and format those to the way that it might be needed or desired at that time. And we've completed step number 5. Let's go on to step number 6. This is freezing rows or columns. And before we do that, we're actually going to hide and unhide a sheet. We're actually going to unhide a sheet, and we'll learn later on how to hide a sheet. So there might be times when you are going to present data that you don't want everything available on the tab or to be presented. So in here we have cars, invoice, sales by car, these tabs. We also have a hidden tab. And there's 2 ways to do it. I can right click on any of the tabs and click unhide, and it brings up this that we have a sheet called scholarships that's hidden. And I'm going to hit cancel there because there's another way we can do it. On the home screen, we can go here to format, and we can do visibility hide or unhide. And we can hide rows and columns and unhide rows and columns and unhide sheet. And I can click on that there. And now this scholarship comes up, and we'll click OK. And now the sheet that was hidden is now available to us to work on. And so now we're going to do this here on our scholarship sheet. Now, one of the things that you'll notice when you use Excel, you might have a lot of columns of data and a lot of rows of data. You can have columns that continue on out to the left and to the right or down. And when we scroll down, notice that we have our information up here at the top, and on row number 4, we have our headers. And when we scroll down, we lose those headers. And if we scroll down too far, it's like, okay, I forgot what this data is. You know, what's its classification or category. So there's the option of freezing this row so that when we scroll down, that row will always stay at the top and the data will scroll down behind it. And that's called freezing a pane. And we're going to practice that 3 different times over the next 3 assignments. So we're just going to do one of the ways here. And the way to do it is we're going to highlight row number 5. The reason why we're going to highlight row number 5 is it freezes everything above that row. So if we were to freeze row 4, it would actually highlight row 4 and freeze there. It would just freeze above 3, 2, and 1, it would freeze those rows, and 4, we would eventually lose seeing that as we scroll down. So we're going to go to row 5. Now here on row 5, what we're going to do now is click the View tab. And to the right on View tab, we have our windows and we have Freeze Panes. Okay? And for this time, we're going to use Freeze Panes. In a future assignments, we're going to do Freeze Top Row and Freeze First Column, and we'll show you how to do that later. But right now, we're going to choose Freeze Panes. And because we highlighted this row, it froze everything above row number 5. So you can see as we scroll, row number 5 goes underneath. And as we scroll down here, we're down here to row 28 or 27. And we can see, okay, this is scholarship ID, student last name, first name, campus, their sport, etc. Okay, very helpful. And besides freezing a row, we can also freeze a column. Now, one of the things you cannot do in Excel is freeze a row and a column on the same sheet at the same time. So it's one or the other. Just get to know that. Okay, that was step 6. Step 7, we're going to customize options and views. We're going to modify entire workbook properties. So we've already talked about in previous videos, what's a row, what's a column, what's a cell, what's a sheet, what's a workbook. So right now we are going to modify the entire workbook. To do that, we're going to go to the File tab up here to the left. We'll click on Info. And over here, we're going to add a categories. You'll need to do this for your Microsoft Office Excel certification. They'll ask you to add a category. One of the easiest ways to do it is that they give you the category name. Go ahead and copy that name and just paste it in. In this case, we're going to type it in. And the reason why you want to copy and paste it is so you don't misspell anything. But right now, we're going to choose this category as scholarships. So we're just going to type in scholarship. Okay. And then click out anywhere in here, and we've got that category. We're also going to change the title while we're in here above, and we're just going to name this Assignment 1. So that's our title, Assignment 1. Our category is scholarships. And this will allow us to view things later on. Okay. And now we've just completed number 7. We're now going to go to number 8, so we can hit Escape or the Back tab and go back to our sheets. And in this case, we're going to go to the Sales by Car tab. And right here on Sales by Car tab, you see that in January we had these sales, and we have this total right here, and we have these totals down here, and we can see that there's a formula in there. And you'll need to do this for your exam. It'll ask you to display formulas. So to do this, we're in the Sales by Car tab. We click on the Formulas tab at the top. And over here to the right, under Formula Auditing, we see where it says Show Formulas. And if we click on that Show Formulas, we see that it brings us out a little bit more. But now we see the formulas that were used to sum each of these rows in there, and then to sum the column there. Because this is different, we're summing the column, and these are summing the rows. So if we ever need to, you'll need to do this on your Excel certification exam. Or if you're like, what formula did I use, or are there any formulas on this page, you can always click Show Formulas and they'll come up. To unshow those, just click Show Formulas again, and our sheet goes back to the way it was. Okay, right there. So we have that. So we've done number 8. Now assignment number 9 on this is we're going to set the print area. And we're going to use the Invoice tab. We're going to use this one on purpose because we have over here a couple charts and all that, but all we want to do is print a specific area. We want to present and print the car rentals area, but we have this other 2 charts in here, and we may or may not want to print those. And one of the easiest ways to do this is down here at the very bottom right, We can change the size of our text to make it easier to be seen. Okay. But we also have this normal view. This looks like a spreadsheet. We have a page layout view, and we have a page break preview. So this page break preview tells us where the breaks are going to be in the printing of the page. So if we click on that, notice that we have page 1 and page 2, and we have this line between I and J. And so if we were to print this right now, page 1 would be this, with part of this chart. The rest of the chart would be on page 2. And this is not the way we want to do it. But while we're in this preview, is we can manipulate it. We can highlight what we need to highlight. So in this case, we're going to highlight a specific print area, and we're going to highlight the car rentals invoice table. So we're going to go from A1, and we're going to scroll this down through F17. So A1 through F17. This is the area we want printed. And then right above this, we're going to choose print layout, set print area or print area. Click the drop down and then click set print area. Now, what this shows you is everything in gray will not be printed, and neither will these two charts. And this over here that's in this page 1 will be what's printed. And we can verify that by clicking on page layout if we've moved off of it to page setup to this pop out, and we can click print preview. And now we can see that we have one page down here to print, and it will just be the car rentals outstanding invoices. Now we can click escape and back to go back to here. Now if we want to get out of this page, which is what we'll want to do, but this will allow you to set the print area that you'll need to do for your exam. We can go back here, and down here at the bottom, we can go from page break preview back to our normal view, which is this spreadsheet view, and we can go back to the normal view, and we can also hit escape or just anywhere off of there to unhighlight that there. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to inspect the workbook for issues. We're going to check for accessibility issues. And we do this because sometimes you have people that are colorblind, or in other cases that are hard of hearing that may need some text-to-speech things going on. So if they can't see a chart or something like that, they can hover over it and it'll tell them what the chart says or parts of it. Or we can't, as a colorblind person, we've used the wrong colors, like we might have blue on green and they can't see that. So we can always inspect our workbooks for these. And so this will be the last thing that we do here. Go into File, Info, and we're going to check for issues. We're going to do that drop down. And in this case, we're going to do a couple of these others later on, but we're going to check accessibility right now. And under accessibility, right now, what we show is an error. We have 3 missing object descriptions. We will not change those in this exercise. We will do something of that later. And then we have this warning, hard to read text contrast. We can click on that, and we can see that the card types table has a hard contrast. We'll click the drop down, and it takes us over here to this, and now we can choose. We can come over here and we can choose in our accessibility to table style, because we have this green on blue, which might be really hard to do. And we can click on, and it shows our table styles recommended actions. And in this case, we're going to choose light, and the next one over, which says white table style light 1. In your exam, it will tell you the table style. It might say medium, okay, light gray, medium, table style medium 8. So there's medium, and you'll have to scroll over and find that. So in this case, we're going to use what's called white table style light 1. So it's under light, and you'll just have to scroll to find that. And in this case, it's white table style light 1. We're going to choose that. It changed our table, okay, over there, and we can click our accessibility now. Click out of there, and I would change one other thing here. We have this blue on green text here with this gray and stuff. So I'm going to click on this. This is not part of the exam, but it is part of your assignment due. So click on this number 1 here, this first row, and then right above this, if we're not in the home layout page, make sure we're in the home page. We have our paint can, which is our fill, and we're just going to choose this second gray, white background 1, darker 15. Try to match these other grays so it's much easier to read. Okay, we've completed this. Go ahead and save your file. For those of you in the 1400 class, we need you to go ahead and click File, Save As. When it comes up, you have your car types assignment 1 here. We want you to add your last name, type in your last name, and then your first name, and type in your actual last name and first name. And I always capitalize that I. So type in your last name, first name. In this case, save it to this PC. Go ahead and click Save at this point. And then for those of you that are in the class, you will need to then upload this file as part of your assignment deliverables. For those of you that are just doing it to practice for your MOS certification, thank you for joining us for assignment number 1. Thank you very much.